वेलकम बैक गाइस। तो अभी अपन पढ़ेंगे, ये मेरी स्क्रीन आई थिंक विजिबल है। ठीक है। ओके, गिव मी सम टाइम, वेट हो गया। सो सो आई थिंक लाइव इज राइट नाउ इज लाइव। सो आई एम प्लानिंग टू लर्न स्टडी विद विवेक। वेलकम विथ स्टडी विद विवेक चैनल में। ठीक है। तो मेरी प्लानिंग यार ये है कि अपन पहले क्या पढ़ेंगे। पहले I'm just planning to learn these containerized OpenShift. This is the Red Hat training session. Training means क्या है? इसमें I'm planning to give the exam of certification of Red Hat. So this is the first learning session with us. So those people are want to get a certificate from Redhat training like OCP, like DO 180 or like EX 180 exam is there in that. So that people can learn with me. Okay. So start our learning part. So first we are going to start one topic, troubleshooting containerized application. कंटेनराइज एप्लीकेशन को ट्रबल शूट क्या करते हैं, इसमें गोल क्या हम गोल है, गोल इज गोल इज गोल ट्रबल शूट a containerized application deploy on OpenShift। ठीक है, दिस इज द फर्स्ट गोल। एंड ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है, इसका ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या है इस चैप्टर का? ट्रबल शूट एन एप्लीकेशन, बिल्ड एंड डिप्लॉय द OpenShift ऑन OpenShift। ट्रबल शूट एक एप्लीकेशन है, उसको ट्रबल शूट करेंगे और उसको डिप्लॉय करेंगे OpenShift पे। ये OpenShift का एक कंटेनराइज्ड है। ठीक है, यहाँ पे इसको डिप्लॉय करेंगे, ये इसका ऑब्जेक्टिव है। इम्प्लीमेंट अ टेक्निक फॉर ट्रबल शूटिंग एंड डिबगिंग कंटेनराइज्ड एप्लीकेशन। ठीक है। सेक्शंस क्या है, क्या क्या सेक्शन कवर जो कर रहे हैं इस चैप्टर्स में? ट्रबल शूटिंग, यस टू आई, सोर्स टू इमेज। ठीक है, बिल्ड एंड डिप्लॉयमेंट एंड गाइड एक्सरसाइज आल्सो देयर। ट्रबल शूटिंग कंटेनराइज्ड एप्लीकेशन एंड गाइड एक्सरसाइज देयर। ठीक है, कैसे ट्रबल शूट करते हैं। लैब भी है, ट्रबल शूटिंग कंटेनराइज्ड एप्लीकेशन लैब भी है। ठीक है। फिर आते हैं अपने फर्स्ट टॉपिक। फर्स्ट टॉपिक क्या है? ट्रबल शूटिंग, यस टू आई, ट्रबल शूटिंग, ट्रबल शूटिंग, ट्रबल शूटिंग एस टू आई, बिल्ड एंड डिप्लॉयमेंट। देखो, तुम मेरे साथ पढ़ सकते हो, स्क्रीन शायद ये सब कुछ दिख रहा होगा, है ना? पढ़ो एक बारी, जो कुछ समझ आए राइट डाउन करो नोट्स पे अपने, है ना? सो सो आफ्टर completing this section, students should be able to, ये सेक्शन कंप्लीट करने के बाद क्या क्या कर सकते हैं, जो कि जैसे मैं पढ़ रहा हूँ अभी, इस सेक्शन को कंप्लीट करने के बाद क्या क्या अंडरस्टैंडिंग हो जाएगी और मैं क्या कर सकता हूँ, तो ये बता रखा है। ट्रबल शूट, देखो प्रैक्टिकल एक्सरसाइज तो नहीं शायद कर पाएंगे, अगर छोटी मोटी होती तो सेटअप हो सकता है, बट अभी सेटअप नहीं है मेरे पास तो नहीं कर सकता। ठीक है, तो हो जाए, मैं इसकी रैम बढ़ाऊंगा सिस्टम की, तो मैं सेटअप करूंगा, तो then फिर हम कर सकते हैं। CRC सेटअप करेंगे। ठीक है, CRC। ठीक है, ट्रबल शूटिंग एप्लीकेशन। ठीक है, एप्लीकेशन बिल्ड एंड डिप्लॉय। Analyzing OpenShift logs, identify the problem during the build and deployment। जो बिल्ड और डिप्लॉयमेंट टाइम पे, जो भी एरर्स लॉग्स देते हैं ना, लॉग्स, इनको एनालाइज करेंगे। अगर लॉग्स में कोई फेलियर है, ठीक, अगर लॉग्स में कोई फेलियर है तो हम उसको एनालाइज, आइडेंटिफाई दैट प्रॉब्लम। ठीक है, नेक्स्ट The process, ये वाली प्रोसेस है। ठीक। ये जो है ना, द एस टू आई प्रोसेस। एस टू आई मीन्स, ये मैंने थोड़ा पढ़ा हुआ, सोर्स टू या टू इमेज, सोर्स टू इमेज, सोर्स से इमेज प्रोसेस क्या है? एस टू आई इज सिंपली वे टू create image based on programming language in OpenShift. Unfortunately, 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 problem may arise during the S2I image. Okay, S2I image creation process. ठीक है, either by the programming language characteristics or to ठीक है, ठीक, runtime environment that require both developer and administrator work together. ठीक। Next is initially, initially important to understand the basic workflow for the most of the programming language supported by OpenShift. The S2I image creation process is composed of two major steps. Composing two major steps. S2I image creation is composed in two major steps. First is build step, second is deployment steps. S2I. So build क्या होता है? Build responsible for compiling source code, downloading binary dependency and packaging the application as a Docker image. Furthermore, the build steps push the image to the OpenShift registry for the deployment step. The build step is managed by build config VC from the OpenShift. The build steps is managed by this one. So the build step is managed by build config from the OpenShift. ठीक। Building steps क्या बोले? It's responsible to compiling the code, downloading the binaries and dependencies, and packaging the application as a Docker file. Docker file. Further more steps, it will push that it will push that it will push to that Docker hub. It will push, ठीक है, it will push to that Docker hub. It will push in the OpenShift registry here. यहाँ पे देखो, it will step to push the image, push that build. Further more information, build and push the uh, furthermore, the build step push the image to OpenShift registry for the deployment step. The build step is managed by the build config, who is managed by build config. ठीक। Next is responsible deployment. Build complete responsible for understanding a pod and making an application available for OpenShift. Making the code and making an application available for OpenShift. This step we execute after the build step. Execute after that build steps. But the only if the build step is executed without the problem. The deployment step is managed by deployment config. Deployment managed is the deployment config from OpenShift. S2I मेनली दो स्टेप होते हैं, एक तो बिल्ड करता है, ऊपर डिप्लॉयमेंट करता है। बिल्ड में क्या करता है, and build steps में क्या करता है, dockerize that your compile the source code, downloading the binaries and dependency, managing as the docker compose docker images, and build and push to that image, push the image to the OpenShift registry. Build managed by the build config, and ठीक है, build config deployment. डिप्लॉयमेंट रिस्पॉन्सिबल होता है किस लिए, डिप्लॉयमेंट रिस्पॉन्सिबल होता है स्टार्टिंग अ pod, starting a pod, making an application available for the OpenShift and execute after the build is success, build step is completely executed without that problem। ठीक है, डिप्लॉयमेंट स्टेप्स इज मैनेज्ड बाय, किसके द्वारा डिप्लॉयमेंट स्टेप मैनेज करी जाती है, जैसे डिप्लॉयमेंट बिल्ड स्टेप्स बिल्ड कॉन्फ़िग के थ्रू और डिप्लॉयमेंट स्टेप डिप्लॉयमेंट कॉन्फ़िग के थ्रू। ठीक है, समझिए। सो इनको पढ़ते हैं, is in S2I every application has its own build config and deployment config. The build config and deployment config name match the application name. The deployment process is aborted if the build fails. That's its own application build config, right? Every application has its own build config and build deployment config, and the build config and deployment config name match the application name। अगर इनमें फेल तो about the build fails। ठीक है, the S2I process, देखो सबसे पहले क्या होता है, जो एप्लीकेशन नेम होना चाहिए ना, जो एप्लीकेशन नेम होता है वो बिल्ड कॉन्फ़िग के थ्रू और डिप्लॉयमेंट कॉन्फ़िग दोनों मैच होने चाहिए। ठीक, नेक्स्ट है द नेक्स्ट है द S2I process start each step in the separate pod। S2I process starts each steps in separate pod. Therefore, the build step is create a pod named application name hyphen build hyphen number hyphen starting string. One each build the attempt the whole build steps is executed and log is stored. Log is stored after successful execution, the application is started on separate pod. Application is started on separate pod, normally named as application name string। S2I process start each step in separate pod. Separate pod. There, therefore, the build step is create a pod named application name build number string। For each build attempt, the whole build steps is executed and a log is stored. Executed and log is stored. After a successful execution, the application is started on separate code. After After that successful execution started and code normally named as application. Like that. OpenShift has a rich web console listing the isolated steps mentioned previously by project. ठीक. Okay. To identify any build issue, the logs from build can be evaluated using the build link from the left panel depicted as follow. Issue. The logs from build can be evaluated using the builds link. Okay, DO81 CP things. देखो. अभी क्या है, ये अपना एप्लीकेशन है, एप्लीकेशन नेम और स्ट्रिंग, ठीक है. ये वेब कंसोल है, इसका बिल्ड सेक्शन पे जाके बिल्ड कंसोल, बिल्ड लास्ट, बिल्ड स्टेटस है, ड्यूरेशन कितने सेकंड में कंप्लीट हो गया, क्रिएटेड, टाइप सोर्स एंड सोर्स, infrastructure.ai.example.node.js, detailed vision of project. On each attempt to build a history of the build is provided for administrator evaluation. उसके बाद नोड है build config, ठीक है, and deployment config, node.js application, OpenShift build config name, label, these are the node label created. Status, want to see the status is completed, started 2017, ड्यूरेशन इतने सेकंड में स्टार्ट हो गया, ट्रिगर्ड बाय बिल्ड कॉन्फ़िगरेशन चेंजेस. कॉन्फ़िगरेशन, build strategy source, build image, OpenShift Node.js, this is the image name is build it, build by yes to I process, first is build, second is deploy. समझ रहे हो भाई. ठीक. मैं तो थोड़ा थोड़ा समझ ही रहा हूँ, तुम भी समझो. नेक्स्ट है, on the other hand, to identify EC during the deployment steps, the application link from the left panel can be used. On each pod deploy, the logs can be forbidden access the application deployment. Left on the left panel. From the left panel can be used. Pod identify during the deployment. देखो, ये वेब कंसोल का है आउटपुट, ठीक. नोट जस्ट ये एप्लीकेशन नहीं बनता आपका, ठीक. ये इन्वायरमेंट डिटेल लॉग्स, ये देखो लॉग्स दिख रहा है, लॉग्स यहाँ पे देख सकते हो, इवेंट भी देख सकते हो. इमेज चेंजेस, selectors, app equals to node label, deployment node label, deployment config equals node.js hello. Flickas means same code we are creating multiple times. Correct. Next is देखो, detail to the अब main important चीज है ये, है ना. देखो, to identify the problem using OC command line interface. ठीक है, OC क्या कमांड लाइन इंटरफेस है जिससे हम गेट कर सकते हैं लॉक्स वगैरह. So the logs command may be used Likewise, in the web interface, it has a set of commands which provide the information about each steps. For example, to get logs from build configuration, the following command is this build configuration. If you want to logs, the build application name. ठीक OC logs and OC logs configuration name. सब यहाँ पर नेम एप्लीकेशन जैसे मेरा नेम एप्लीकेशन का नेम का यहाँ पे आओ Node.js hello world 1 तो पुट कर दो Node.js hello world 1 ठीक अब इसके डिप्लॉयमेंट लॉग्स जो तुम्हारे बिल्ड वाले लॉग्स है ना वो दिखते हैं बिल्ड कॉन्फ़िग वाले लॉग्स दिखें ठीक if you if a build fails the build config must be restarted if build fail must config be restarted to request a new build the following command may be used to request a new build request a new build oc start hyphen build application name a new pod with the build processes automatically start एक नया pod होगा नेक्स्ट इज a new pod होगा स्टार्ट ठीक है यहाँ पे लिखा हुआ a new pod with the build process is automatically started after a successful build a pod is started in which the application and the deployment process is executed after the build success a pod is started in which the application and deployment process is executed troubleshoot कैसे करते हैं ये बेसिक पार्ट है ना troubleshooting का common problem. Sometimes source code requires some customization that may not be available in containerized environment. For the instance, database credentials, file system access, and message queue information normally provide as an internal environment variable may need to changes. So the OC log command provide the important output about the build deploy, and run process of an application. During the execution of pod, the log normally indicates missing value or options that must be enabled incorrect parameter invalid flag or environment incompatibilities. Now, this application logs must be clearly labeled to identify problem quickly without the need of learn the container internals. ठीक है क्या है the logs clearly, clearly labeled to identify the problem quickly. Hmm. Permission issue. OpenShift run S2I container using RHEL Red Hat Enterprise Linux as the अभी अपने पास क्या आ गया है रेड एट आर एच की जगह पे कोर एंटरप्राइज लिनक्स आ गया है। ठीक है, एज द बेस इमेज ओपन शिफ्ट यूजिंग कंटेनराइज आर एच, तो यहाँ पे मैं डालूंगा आर एच सी कोर एंटरप्राइज शायद ये है। एक बार कंफर्म कर लेना, ठीक है। तो हाउ सो एनी रन टाइम differences may imply in a runtime error. The usually problem identify is the permission denied error due to the wrong permission used by developer or incorrect environment permission set by administrator. For example, S2I image enforce the use of different user that root to access file system and external resource. Also, RHEL7 works with the enforcing SE Linux policy that blocks any access to file resources, or network code or processor. SE Linux on the container deplo- deployment kit. VM is set up for permissive, which is different from the RHEL7 and OCP standard policies. The some container may require a specific user ID, but S2I is designed to run containers using the random user as per the default OpenShift security policy. Default OpenShift security policy. Some user provider default user ID, but S2I is designed to run containerized using the random user for the default OpenShift security policy, right? Yeah. To fix this condition, relax the OpenShift project security with the command OC admin policy. As an example, see the set policy.sh script used on some of the previous labs allows the user define in the Docker file. Somewhere use करी हुई ना भाई। नहीं है ना। ठीक कोई नहीं। फाइल ढूंढ रहा हूँ इसलिए। So field the environment, ठीक, file to run that environment, ठीक है। ठीक, invalid parameters, volume mount errors, and absolute image, Multi-container application may share parameters such as login credentials, verify the some same values for parameter are used to all container in the application. For example, Python application running one container links with the container running database. Both container must be use username and password for database. Normally logs from the application pod provide a clear idea of these problem and how to solve them. Multi-container application में share parameters. Multi-container application may share parameters such as login. For example, Python application running in one container links with container running a database. Both containers must be username and password for the database. Normally, logs from the application code provide a clear idea. The containers should be then the read balloon mount tariffs. When redeploying an application that use, uses a persistent volume on a local file system, the pod may have problem allocating a persistent volume claim even though even though the persistent volume indicate that the claim is released. To solve it, the persistent volume claim and the persistent volume must be deleted. In this order, then the persistent volume must be recreated. Absolute image errors. The cover OpenShift pulls image from the source named in the image stream unless it finds a locally cached image on the node where the pod is scheduled to run. If you push a new image to the registry with the same name and tag, you must remove the image from each node the pod is scheduled on with the command docker rmi check also oc adm purun prun command for more automated way to remove the absolute image. इसका मतलब क्या हुआ? ये सब रिमूव करते हैं ये दिमाग में है ना इसका ठीक है लाइक रेफरेंस के लिए हम ऐसे पढ़ सकते हैं प्लेटफॉर्म क्रिएटिंग इमेज More information about troubleshooting image is available in the guidelines section on the OpenShift container platform documentation. इस documentation पे जाएंगे तो और ठीक है. Next is guided exercise troubleshooting on OpenShift. In this exercise, we will troubleshoot a OpenShift build and deployment process. So application URL लिया रहा तो outcome होना तो you should be able to identify and solve the problem arise during the build and deployment process of Node.js application. Before we begin, must OpenShift must be installed and run on the OCP virtual machine. So, so OpenShift must be installed in OCP. OCP means OpenShift Container Platform in VM. So retrieve the lab files and verify Docker and OpenShift are up and running by executing the lab script. So workstation अगर मैं इस पे जाऊँगा ठीक इसको मैं एक बारी हटा के ना ठीक Control C window R notepad input control again control V. Let's check that sample. Okay. नहीं कुछ नहीं है इसमें ठीक है फिर थोड़ा retrieve the lab.oc and dc bc and dc build config deployment config setup steps log into OpenShift and create a new project. OC login hyphen u developer http this OCP login this login to the OpenShift trainer. Log into that HTTP log as a developer using the existing credentials. Developers OCP new project Node.js. Create a new project Node.js. ठीक. You may have to enter the credential for the developer account. The password is developer. The current project is password is developer. The current project in your command output may differ from the listing above. हो सकता है हाँ, ठीक है. नेक्स्ट है क्रिएट नोड जेएस एप्लीकेशन यूजिंग अ सोर्स टू इमेज ये मतलब था सोर्स टू इमेज ठीक है फ्रॉम द गिट रिपोजिटरी http infrastructure.lab.example.com node.js hello world ठीक now using the oc new command to create a node.js application the command is provide in do at labbcdc.txt command ये labs है ना ये अगर मैं जाऊंगा तो यहाँ पे एप्लीकेशन होते हैं मैं देखो do0 do0180 git out अबे लैब है क्या? लैब PHP रोल्ट ये एप्लीकेशन है इसका। लैब्स होगा, किसी में तो किसी में होगा। लैब्स। बड़े बड़े एप्लीकेशन है, ये डिप्लॉय करके देख सकते हैं ना। ये डिप्लॉय करके देख सकते हैं, बट अभी के लिए हमें ये, अभी हम टेक्स्ट दे देते हैं, ठीक है। यहाँ पे प्रोवाइड द कमांड oc dot new app build environment nfp config registry infrastructure nexus content registry. The build environment option defined as the environment. The build environment option defined as the environment variable to the builder pod. Define the environment variable to the builder pod that max npm command, which is run as a part of build to fetch npm modules from a Nexus server in the infrastructure team. The In the previous command, there should be no space between registry and slash. Registry and slash. There should also be no space before the HTTP colon, but there is a space before the Node.js 4. Here the space is there. ठीक है, ये important notes हैं, लिख सकते हैं. So wait until the application finish. Build by monitoring the progress with the OC get pods hyphen W. To building by monitoring, finish building, monitoring the process with that OC. ठीक है. The build process failed and there are no application is running. Build failure are usually consequences of syntax error in the source code or missing dependencies. The next steps investigate the specific causes for this failure. Specific causes of failure. Evaluate the error raised during the build process. So the build is triggered by adding the configuration BC created by OpenShift when S2I process is started. BCI by default. By default, the OpenShift S2I process create a BC named Node.js and which is responsible for triggering the build process. ठीक है, S2I का first part of the build. Run this command in the terminal window to confirm the output of the build process. What is that? This workstation OC logs hyphen F BC build config वाला है, तो दिखाया था अभी. ठीक. The following errors it rise as part of the build logs. OC logs hyphen BC node.js hello world. So cloning that application from this and commit fixed version, installing the application source, build your node application from source, npm error, not or get no compatible version found. ठीक है, note of error, build error. It will get a bit non-zero 13 exist code from this OpenShift. As the output indicate the format used by the express dependency is not a valid. Fix the build process from the project. The developer use a non-standard version of Express framework that is available locally on each developer's workstation. Due to the company standard, the version must be downloaded from the Node.js official registry. Official registry, and from the developer's input, it is compatible with the 4.1.4.14.x. Clone the Git repository, open a new terminal window from the workstation, your application favorite terminal. Then run the following command: git clone infrastructure.lab. This नहीं है वो clone होता ना. हम्म, हम्म. Infrastructure.lab. Evaluate the package.json using your preferred editor. Node.js package file. Check the dependency version provided the developer. It used the incorrect version. Express dependency which is the incompatible with the supported version provided by the company. Updated the dependency version. Text commit and push changes made that cd get push restart S2I process. So restart that S2I process after the changes. After the changes, restart the S2I process. To restart the build steps, execute the following command: OC start build config Node.js application. Build started. The the build step is restarted and a new build pod is created. Check the log using the following command: oc logs hyphen the vc pods. Restart. Restart. New build pod is created. Check the logs. The following output is displayed. Cloning and push success. The both success, however, does not mean the application is started. The build was successful, however, it does not mean the application is started. अभी नहीं हुआ था. So evaluate the status of the current build process. Current build process. Run the command to check the status of codes. Status of the Node.js application. Hyphen OC dot OC dot get pod. OC dot get pod means it's so in the book. According to the following output, the second build was successful, but the application code is uh, using that error. Completed. Crash back law. वो try कर रहा था नहीं था नहीं मेरे पास. Completed. Status is completed. ठीक. उसके बाद check the log generated by Node.js allowed one RPS pod. ठीक. जो फेल हुआ क्रैश बैक लॉग वाला जो फेल हुआ ना, उसको चेक करने के लिए pod का OC check the log generated by Node.js hello world one RPS done one pod. ठीक है. Then the OC logs hyphen Node.js hello world हमने हिट करी कमांड, ये वाली हिट करी कमांड OC logs the use the value from the output previous steps. Expected output error Linux. This this application fail startup because of script missing. ठीक. Fix the problem with the starting the application pod. Fix the package rotation file to define a startup command. From the previous output, Node.js allow package.json file is missing. The script attribute the start field according to the developer's minimal effort was made to adopted the application to run as the Docker image by running working with community Docker image to run that. The script start, not just we need to put it. Fix the problem, add to the package rotation file command attribute, commit and push the changes, commit type and add the start of the script. ठीक है. And continue to deploy the steps. Fix this script missing. ठीक. Commit and push project. Continue deploy. To restart, build the step, execute the following command. Again, steps to restart the command. Start hyphen build BC. Evaluate the status of the current build process. Run the command pod. Now here you can see that they are completed and running is coming. According to the following, third build was successful and this time the application was started without the errors. ठीक. हाँ ठीक है. और इसके बाद है check the locks generated by Node.js pod. OC logs, check the logs generated by pod. Pod करने हम log hyphen f use the same value from the output. Payment start not just hello world listening port 808. This time the application is running on port 808. The test the application. Run the following command to expose that SVG hello world SP service. Run to the following command to expose the application outside of the world. ठीक है, expose. Check the address associated with this application. What is that command? OC dot get route. It will get the associated address. So now access the application from the workstation VM from the command line. Access the workstation curl like that. Verify that application was correctly set up. Run the following grading script from a terminal window. Delete the project which deletes all the resources in the project. OC delete project. Troubleshoot containerized application. Troubleshoot containerized application. Troubleshooting. किसी नया टॉपिक रहेगा भाई. Troubleshooting. अभी कॉन्सेप्ट चल रही पढ़ रहे हैं अपन. गाइड लैब ट्रबल शूटिंग लैब है ना अभी. ऑब्जेक्टिव ट्रबल शूट कंट्राइज एप्लीकेशन ऑब्जेक्टिव क्या था. ठीक है. After completing this section, students should be able to implement the technical troubleshooting debugging containers application with the port forwarding feature of the OpenShift client tool. View the container logs, view the Docker and OpenShift forwarding the port Docker icon like that, and OpenShift provide that OC port forward command that forward the local port to a port port. This difference having that access port through the server resource. The port forwarding mapping the exists only in the workstation where the OC client runs, while a service maps a port for all network users. Service load balancer. Service load balances connection to potentially mm, multiple ports while a port forwarding. Mapping forward. OC dot, here is the example OC dot port forward. The above command forward port 3030 for the developer registration to port 330 on the DB port where the MySQL server inside the container access the network connection. Be sure to leave this terminal without running. Closing. Closing the window or cancelling the process will stop the port forwarding IP. Will the Docker run -p? P means port forwarding. Mapping can only be configured when the container is started. OC port forwarding can be created, destroy at any time after the port was created. ठीक है. Note. Creating a node port service type of database port would be similar to using Docker run -p, but must administrator prefer not using that port database exposing. Using OC port forwarding debugging Java application. C.env assigning running container docker oc.exe. So we are going to take a 30 to 35-minute break. ठीक है? We are going to take a break or like 1 hour session is completed. ठीक है? हम्म, यहाँ से स्टार्ट करें. है ना? तो 30 मिनट बाद स्टार्ट करते हैं. ठीक है? ठीक है। तो अपन कंप्लीट हो चुकी है, कितना पढ़ लिया अपन ने? हम्म, यहाँ तक था। नेक्स्ट क्या है? Using OC port forward for debugging Java application. Another use of the port forwarding feature is enable remote debugging. Enable remote debugging. Many integrated development environment provide the capability to remotely debug application. For example, JBoss developer JBDS allow users to utilize the Java debug wire protocol JDBWP communicate between a debugger JVDC and Java virtual machine when the enabled developers can set steps through each line of a code as it is being executed in real time. JDWP to work with Java virtual machine where the application runs must be started with option enabling remote debugging. For example, Worldfly, JBoss, like that. ये ज्यादा जरूरी नहीं लग रहा मुझे पढ़ना, क्योंकि सब चीजें बनना है। पोर्ट फॉरवर्डिंग आते करो, पोर्ट फॉरवर्डिंग लाइक दैट। OC port hyphen forward the server name. Once the debug is enabled and the port forwarding mapping is running, user can set a breakpoint in their ID or of choose and run the debugger by pointing to the application host name. Access container logs, container के logs जैसे देख सकते हैं। Docker and OpenShift provide the ability to view the container and ports to facilitate troubleshooting process. ठीक है, aware of application specific logs, both expect the application to be configured on top to the standard of US. When Docker start a container, either directly or on the OC cluster, we redirect the container standard output. Added saving the disk as part of the container infrared storage. Container infrared storage. This be the container logs can be viewed using Docker and OC command even after the container was stored but not removed. But not removed. To get the output of a running container, use the Docker command. Docker logs so for the Docker container name and OC logs for reference image containers. The container name is optional. If there is only one container, as OC will just default long container everything. Docker and OpenShift event. Docker and OpenShift event क्या होता है? Some developers find Docker and OpenShift logs are too low level and digging For useful troubleshooting, information may not be trivial. Fortunately, both provides higher level login and auditing facility called it events. Docker and OpenShift event signal significant action like starting a container or destroying a pod. Docker event. Show the Docker event with the events logins. Event atlas. This is file into out of container, getting files into the out of container. When troubleshooting or managing application, it may necessary to move file into and out of running containers such as configuration file or log files. There are several ways to move files into or out of container. Docker CP. So as a Docker, troubleshooting and managing the background, there are several ways to go container. So Docker CP command. As a Docker version pointed CP where we allow user to copy file both into and out of a running container to copy a file into a container named. So to do API, the syntax look like this: Docker CP standalone.config file, and I want to copy this file here after JBoss standalone config. To copy a file from the container to the host, CP to do like container host, provide the commands. This is the command Docker CP. This CP alternative was the advantage volume mount. Another option for copying file from the host to a container is using volume mount. User can mount a local directory to copy data into a container. For example, the following command sets the host/config directory as the volume to the. Another option to copying the file copying from host to container using the volume mount. User can mount local directory to copy data into the container. For example, the following command sets of host directory as the volume to be used Apache configuration. Like that. Directory. This create a simple way to manage the Apache server without having the rebuild the container image. This create a simple way to manage Apache server without having rebuild the container. Docker run hyphen cf pinging docker exe. जरूर उतना ही मुझे पढ़ने के भी सब कमांड्स कर सकते हैं सी the OCRS rsyncs command provide the facility similar Docker CP. For the container running under the OpenShift folder. Demonstrate forwarding port SSH OCP. Then OCP dot SSH control D means connection to OCP is closed. If the OC login command prompts about using secure connection, okay, yes, create a new application RSCL OCP Docker image ये यहाँ से image उठाएगी to कर देंगे port forwarding and I will name equals to port forwarding slash I can use the name this password this this run the OC status OC dot get pod much pod is running OC get forward imported OC port forward command does not return to the bash shell. Leave this leave the terminal open and then open another terminal for the next step. Open a new terminal window on the workstation VM and run the following command to connect the database using the MySQL know, connect. Connected. You can show the tables, databases, edit, press Control C in the terminal window. Just enter the OZ port forward command. This is stops. Okay, guide exercise from here. Watch a container logs. Except logs. Full log level debug HTTP container Apache logs. Log level debug. Custom log. ये पेंडिंग रखते हैं अभी, क्योंकि इसको हम प्रैक्टिकल ही देखेंगे कभी। जब भी कभी हमें देखना हो ना, तो प्रैक्टिकल ही देखेंगे। Summary in the chapter, we will learn as to why image requires security concerns must be addressed by build and deployment issues. Deployment and sysadmin terms must work together to identify the mitigate problem due to the S2I image creation. The version contained by using OC port forwarding command to debug application as the last stage. So concept event provide the low level information. So now this chapter is completed. Next chapter, I will tell you which chapter we will going to discuss. Or not discuss. I'm reading. You are reading. Yeah. So thank you. I'm going